This conference will now be recorded.
All right, so we'll get started then. So what we see today is something about the calculated fields. Okay, so what do we see today is something about calculations. Okay, so what is calculation and where do we use them? Why do we need to use these calculations? Right, so we'll take a look here. Let's open Tableau. Connect 20 filters. Switch version 2020. Okay. All right. So here we have the data in different columns with the different data types. But with the existing data, it is not possible to do the complete analysis. So then what we have to do? So then we have to make use of the calculated fields, and then we create our own required data, and then we perform the analysis. So that means with existing data, when it is not possible to do in-depth analysis, then the other options we have is, fine, let's create our own data. Then, so in addition to the existing one, so let's create our own data, and then with the help of that, we'll do the analysis. And if you want to create a data, let's say a column, if I want to create a new column, then how do you do that, isn't it? So if you want to create a new column, so it is not directly like creating, right click and say new, so you can't do that. So for that, we have to make use of the calculated fields. All right, so what is calculations or calculated fields? I'll just put one word here and then we'll get inside of that. Calculated fields, and just one line statement I want to make here. When we cannot do the complete analysis of with the existing data, then we can create our data with the help of calculated fields. All right, so we can create our own data with the help of some small logics, and that logics needs to be returned inside this calculated fields. All right, so we'll take an example, then we'll see that. But how do you create a calculated field? So let's take a look here. So you can go to Analysis tab, and you have an option here, Create a Calculated Field. So if you click on that, you will get this window, and this window will have different sections. So just click on this arrow, then it will try to expand, and it shows that there are so many things which we could use here. So we'll talk about what are these. But let's see the different ways of creating a calculated field. So one way is go to Analysis tab and click on Create Calculated Field. Otherwise, go to here, the drop down, and say Create a Calculated Field. Then you get the same thing. And you can also right click on any of the dimensions, and you can say Create Calculated Field. And can I create a calculated field for measures as well? So you can definitely create this for measures as well, right? And apart from this, if we try to click on the empty space here at the end, it's very difficult to move here, but let's say I search for any item here, so you get an empty space at the bottom. And even here, if you right click and say create calculated field, So yes, you can do the same thing. So there's no difference wherever you want to create that. So whatever options, we can definitely use that. Okay, so this is how we can create calculated field, but how do we do that? So what is the procedure to write? Okay, then the very important point, to create calculated fields, we need to make use of functions in Tableau. Okay, now the new word comes up here, function. All right, so what is a function? Okay, I'll just put the brief word. A function is nothing but a small piece of code or a program which might take inputs or or do not take any inputs but provides the output. Right, so generally, so I'm giving this definition based on Tableau itself, but if you ask what is a function in C language, function in Java language, function in .NET language, there it's also very similar definition, but the definition needs to be little modified there. But generally, a function is a small piece of code or a small program which runs automatically, but it sometimes takes inputs and sometimes it doesn't take the inputs, but it gives the output. So this is only in Tableau. So it provides the output is only in Tableau, right? But in other programming languages, so sometimes functions doesn't return any outputs, right? So if you want in detail, I'll just put that 4 different types, but just keep an eye here. So we'll have the functions with inputs and with outputs. So you'll have 4 different types of the functions, but so we don't really care about some things here. Inputs and without outputs. And you will have functions without inputs but with outputs. So this is a combinations of different things, but in Tableau it doesn't apply all combinations. Right, so there are 4 different combinations available in programming languages, but here we don't really focus on all of them because Tableau provides us the outputs. So in Tableau we can categorize into only these 2 things here, right? So with outputs and this one. So only these 2 are applicable to Tableau, right? So that means we have functions which takes the inputs. Sometimes it doesn't take inputs, but every time it gives us the outputs. All right. Okay, so I'll just put that here. Below is the combination in programming languages, but here what is applied, what is applicable in Tableau, below are only applicable in Tableau especially. Right? But when you go to Python, so then again it's 4 different combinations. All right, so now, so we know what is a function, but what is the syntax? How do we write a function, and how do we pass any inputs? If I want to pass input, so how should I pass that input? All right, observe here. So syntax. So syntax for the function. So in Tableau, functions are denoted by the letter F in lowercase. So if you see anywhere the word F coming in front of the word, then that indicates that that is a function, right? And second point here is syntax, how to write the syntax is name of the function. So there are no spaces here. Sorry. So there will not be any spaces in the names of the functions. I'll just put it this way. Name of the function and followed by two brackets. All right, so the function should be called in this fashion. So if you write or if you call, you have to just write the name of the function and then brackets. And then here we have to pass parameters as inputs. So if I don't have any inputs, so don't pass anything here. All right, so let's put that here. One more line. Function without inputs. So how does it looks like? What is the syntax? So what is the syntax? It is just the name of the function, and then you have to use these brackets without fail, and don't give spaces also. Remember this commonly made mistakes. So generally people tend to give spaces, but please don't give the spaces here because this is one complete word. So this indicates that this is a function. It is not taking any inputs, but it will give you some output. Right? And next here is a function with inputs. I want to give some inputs to the program or to the function. Then how do I write that? So the same thing, name of the function, but inside the brackets, then you have to say here your inputs. Input 1. If you have more than one, then separate it by comma. And let's say dot 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 input n. So how many inputs you can pass? You can pass a number of inputs, but here, so in Tableau, the functions are all inbuilt. That means another very important point here is we do not need to create any new functions. That means we will use existing inbuilt functions. So we are not going to create any function. We are just going to use the existing inbuilt functions. All right. So if you are going to use the existing functions, then we just have to pass the inputs. So how many inputs I have to pass? So that will be shown to the user. All right. So let's take a look here, and let's start with a simple function, and then we'll take a look at most of the functions. All right, so let's go to create a calculated field, and if it is something like this, so you can expand that. This is a name of the function. So this is the name of the function. Let's say here this is sample1, and the logics, the functions needs to be written in this area. So you have to write your functions in this area. And when you wrote the syntaxes correctly, then here it shows you that the calculation is valid. If you write something wrong, it shows in some red colored underlines like that. So something is wrong, so it gives you some message here, right, in this corner. And the right side part of it is very user friendly, and you can see here the number of functions available in Tableau, how many functions you have. So you can just scroll down through this complete list. So maybe around 50 to 60 different functions available. All right, so these are so many functions, and these are the only functions available here. All right, and these functions are grouped into these categories. So every function in the list is categorized into the number functions, string functions, date, type conversions, logical, and so on. Right, so these are the groups here. And the last part here is this is very, very user friendly because I don't know how to use that function, what input it takes, what output it takes. No need to worry. Just click on any function here and that help is displayed on the screen itself. So how to use that function and what inputs and what outputs you can expect if you use that example here. All right, let's say here date add. So it tells you like what is that function going to do, and observe here how many inputs you have to pass. Inputs are separated by comma. So this is one input, two inputs, and three. So if you want to use this function, then you have to provide three inputs to this function. And they will give you one example also here. So you can easily look at that function and enter those values, and you can see the expected output. All right, so this is the name. This is a function where we have to write, and here we'll get something valid, invalid. Then the functions are grouped into this area, and the online help readily available on the right side. Okay. So now let's begin how to work with these functions. Now I'm trying to go to the first type here, which is a number functions. And there are so many functions here, but most of them we really don't need them. Maybe I should say reverse. So there are so many functions, and most of the functions will make use of it, but there are some functions which are not very useful. So I'm going to skip those functions for now, but we'll see most of the functions. What are the functions which we are not going to see? We have a trigonometry functions available in this list. That means sine theta, cos theta, tan theta, cosecant theta. So like that you have the trigonometry functions, and so those functions are available in the number functions category. Right, so we really don't need them at this point, but in the notes I have provided how to make use of them, but it's not really needed at this point, and we don't really use them as well. All right, but let's see the one very simple function, and then we'll move to the next ones. So first function, how to make use of this is two ways. Either you double click on this. So when you double click that, any function, so that comes up here in the left side, and use control middle mouse button to minimize and to maximize here, and observe here. So there is a small tooltip coming up here. So the tooltip tells you what is the input you have to pass and how many inputs you have to pass. All right, so this is an tooltip, provides you very good information. Like here, if I see that I need to pass a number, and how many numbers, how many inputs? Only one input here. So if you have more than one input, so that will be shown separated by commas. All right, so you can see here there are two things here. So this is one input, and this is the another input separated by comma. All right, and keep an eye on the different types of inputs which we have to provide. Right, so let's take here. See, observe here. The second way of writing a function is if you type any one character, then it tries to match your input with the list of available functions, which is denoted by F, and it also tries to get the columns which are available in the left side. That means the dimensions and the measures, but they will be denoted with the other data types to which they belongs to. But if it is a function, then it is denoted by F. But if it is a dimension or a measure, then it's denoted by their own symbols. So if I type here region, for example, you can find region is ABC, which is pointing to this dimension, right? And region, you have another matching for country region, which is a globe symbol. So the IntelliSense, okay, what is IntelliSense? This box, when it matches any results, then when it matches any inputs, then it shows the results in this box, which we call it as IntelliSense. So automatically it will tell you that this is what you are trying to look, and this is what the combinations are. All right, so let's say I want to make use of this function, then just hit a tab button. So you can hit a tab and it will write the complete function here. All right, these are the shortcuts as well. So you don't need to select a mouse and click on that. So just hit the tab button on the keyboard, then it tries to write the entire function. All right, and observe the inputs now. I have to pass two different inputs separated by comma. And what type of inputs you have to pass is also very, very important. So here it says, give me the input in the form of a string. All right, so it says a string. But if you take another input here, now it says, give me the expression as an input. So I can pass here direct numbers, or I can pass even the expressions. So expression means some kind of a statements I can make inside this. Right, so we'll talk about more. All right, let's begin with the first one, and I'll go through the very important functions which are very, very useful. So let's click on the very first one, ABS. All right, and how many inputs I have to pass? Only one input. And what it is asking, give me a number. Okay, so if I say take the number as 10, so only one input, isn't it? Yes, 10. And observe another important point. So if I click on apply, where is this getting created? Keep an eye on this. So it is getting created under the measures. That means, will every function creates under the measures? Not exactly. So what is the output of this function? So input you are giving as 10, but what is the output of this function? This output is also a number. So if you observe the help document, the output also gives you the number. And if output is the number, then that's get created under the measures. If the output is not a number, then this calculated fields gets created under the dimensions. All right, so that's the big difference. Keep an eye on this here. All right, so if the output of the function is a number, it always creates under the measures. If the output of the functions are other than the numbers, all right, let's say I just use this function, and if I say apply, now observe where is this getting created here. So it might be created here, isn't it? Because the output of this function will be a string, and that's why it is coming here. All right, that's another point. And let's go back to ABS function, and I want to pass a number 10. Hit on apply. Okay, so it's coming again here. So let's move this back to this. And if you observe carefully, sir, how to differentiate whether the field is a calculated field or is it a measure? How do we differentiate it? Because I'm looking at somebody else's workbook, and how do I recognize whether it is a calculated field, or is it a dimension, or is it a column coming from the data source? Very good question. Now observe this field here. For every calculated field, there will be a symbol equal to, and then the data type. That is how they have differentiated between a calculated field and the existing values. So if you observe carefully, there will be a small equal to sign, and then you can see the hash symbol here. And that equal to symbol denotes that it is a created field, but not field coming from the dimension, coming from the data source. Sorry. Excellent. Now let's go back to the table here. See what I created here. Let's take a look one more time. I created a small function which is ABS here, and let's take a look at the example. If I'm using -7 means it is giving +7. So this may be a function which returns only the positive numbers. Even if you give the negative number, the output will come as the positive number. Even if you give positive number, the output will still be the positive number. So what is ABS here? ABS is a function which takes inputs as a numbers and return the absolute value. Absolute means, so in lowercase, maybe in in school, you might have heard about this, and the result will be always +10. So it returns only the positive numbers. I'm not really worried about what it does, but what is my output which I'm expecting? Here it is 10. I'm expecting 10 as the output because it says 7. I'm expecting 10 as the output. Perfect. Now let's look at the output and let's drag this and put that into the rows. The output I'm expecting was 10, but what is the output here? 99940. Ayo. The input is 10, output is 99940. What is this calculation? Why it's giving this much of big number? Right. So to understand this, you have to definitely go back to the table, click on the table here. All right. So did we create any new column? Yes, we created a new column, isn't it? Now let's go to that column here. Where is that column? Here is the column. So the name is sample1. So this is the name of the column here. Output is 10 only, but what we are doing, we are dragging this field into rows and columns, means it is applying the aggregations, which is sum. So sum of all these 10s, it comes to 99940. All right, so that is the reason it is displaying this number. But sir, my requirement is show me only 10. Why I want all these numbers? I don't want aggregation, please. I want only the number 10. Okay, so your requirement is just to show the output as 10. You don't need the aggregations of all these 10s. Right, then what do we do here is, so observe the step here carefully. I'm just trying to move this from the measure to the dimensions. Hey, did you take a look here? The orange color ones, which shows that the upper part is dimensions and below is the measures, isn't it? So you can see that here itself, isn't it? Right. And then let's move this sample1, the calculated field, into the dimensions. So can I move from measure to dimension? Yes, absolutely, you can do that. And what is the symbol here? So symbol is same, but color is now the blue color here. When it was here, it was green, and when I move to dimension, it is blue. So what does a blue color indicates? Only discrete values. That means it doesn't show duplicate values. Is that so? So that means what output will I get here? So put this into rows, columns, or drag and drop it here. You can see the output as 10. So why you are getting 10? Because I don't want to show the duplicate values. I don't want the aggregations. Just move that to the dimensions and then you get the output here. So can I edit the field now? Okay, what you want to do? I want to edit. I want to change some inputs. Click on edit and change the number here. So let's give some negative numbers here. All right. So no need to close. You can just hit apply and you can see the result here itself. And as I was saying here, observe the calculation is valid. So that means what you wrote here is valid. When it shows invalid, let's say I'm trying to pass here W. All right, so what is it? What does it say? The calculation contains errors. So when you get this kind of messages here, so it is a very, very important that you have to fix the problem yourself. So how? Place your mouse on this. Place your mouse on the red colored one. A reference to undefined field W. So I don't understand what you have to pass there. And it tells you that you have to pass a number. All right, let's say I'm passing a string. So I'm forcefully passing a string. All right, so place there. Observe the error message now. So red color messages are very, very important, and most of them struggle to get rid of those messages when you are doing some reports. But it's very simple. When you read that message properly, understand it, then it is just a single simple thing which we have to fix it. So what it says there, you are calling the function ABS with a string, but can you pass the floating point numbers? Okay, so number means I can even pass the floating points. That means let's say minus 3.5728. Can I pass that? So hit apply. Now I can see the result. All right, so we are not understanding what is this function doing. So we are trying to understand how to use the functions, how to read these messages, and how to move values or calculated fields from measures to dimensions. So sometimes I move from measures to dimensions, sometimes dimensions to measures based on the requirements. And again, there is no thumb rule that you have to move it. No, it all depends on what you wanted to see in the output. And so one common question I get here, sir, when should I move dimension into measure, measure into dimension? That all depends on what you wanted to see, what you wanted to show to the user. So based on that only you have to decide, should I move, should I remain as it is, or should I convert it? All right, so that's one common question you get. All right, so I'll take a quick pass here and let's see, are you following the concept of the functions before we move to the next one? Any questions? Okay, so let's move on to the next one here, and I'll just close it and I'll just retain this here, and let's go to the next type of function available here. Click on create calculated field, and I want to change this to number, and then we'll go through the list here. All right, and as I said, I'll be ignoring the trigonometry functions. It's not very much needed, so we can directly ignore them. I'll go through the list: trigonometry, tan theta, cot theta, and now this is the another function, ceiling. Double click that, and this is one of the certification question and the interview question, so we'll take a look at it. Okay, so now the function name is ceiling. Now if I use something like this, all right, so I'll just close this window and try to answer these questions here. So this is a name of the function is ceiling, and hit apply. Okay, so that means when you are getting in the measure, that means it's returning a number, and I just want that single number. Then I'm just moving that here and we'll put that here. Observe what I gave the input, and this is all like what we call it self-readable functions, but we'll just go through them. So if I give the input as a number, because it is asking give me a number as the input, so I gave some number. And when I gave some number, it is rounding off to the next available number, which is 3. What is the confusion here, isn't it? So if you type any number, it rounds off to the next available number or the integer. Let's say I gave 2.998. What is the output? Click apply. Okay, I'm seeing the output as 3. Excellent. 2.5. Apply. Okay, still the answer is 3. This is the certification question. What is the output? Put your answers in the chat window, what you are expecting with this. Very quickly, 10 seconds. What can be the answer for this question? It's only one person hearing the session. No. Right, so I gave a number which is 2.0001, and when I try to hit apply, what is the output I'm seeing? Ayyo, 3. Why it doesn't show 2? Because this is a function which will round off to the next available numbers. So whatever the value you have here, 0.000001, still it gives you the output as 3. So it is not rounding off to the nearest value. No, it is not rounding off to the nearest value. It is displaying the next available integer. Right, so it is trying to display the next available integer. So that means here, so we got this in the system test question. So if I use 5 here, will it round off to 6? This is what interviewer asked. Confusion started. So 5 means will I get 6, or will it show only 5? Now hit apply to see the output here. So is this close? You are blocking my view. So hit apply, you will still see the output as 5 only. That means if you are passing any number, integer, then it returns the same output. But in case if you are using any decimals like this, then observe, then it rounds off to the next available integer. So another question I heard is, sir, if I use 5.00, all right, what is the expected output? All right, so 5 or 6. Very confusing, isn't it? So hit apply, so you will still see 5 only. All right, so you still see only 5 because 5.00 is nothing but, it is nothing but just 5 only. So it returns the same number 5. So that means very simple conclusion here. If you use any integers, then it returns the same number. If you use any decimal values any numbers after the decimals, then it's going to, we are using equate symbol. So then it returns the next available integer. All right, now read this definition here, so which you have here. So rounds to the nearest integer of equal or greater value. So this is in little high level thing, but if you have understood what we discussed, then so if you use the same number, if you use the number, you get the same number, but if you use any decimal values like this, then it rounds off to the next available integer. Okay, so let's see the another one, which are the twins. So it's always opposite to each other. There is another function here. Scroll down. There is a function called as floor. This is exactly opposite to what we are discussing here. Right, so let's say here this is C1. I'm renaming this calculated field, and I'm using two slashes here. So two slashes is like I'm commenting out this part. So don't run this, but run this here, what I'm trying to write. So the other function is floor. So where is that function? You can find it somewhere here. Okay, so now let's write that function, floor, and what input you have to pass? It's the number only. Alright, so I'm passing the number 3.5. Okay, is the calculation valid? You have to always look at it. Hit apply. So it is rounding off to 3. So that means there are two things here. This is the ceiling, this is the floor, and this is your numbers. So any number if you give, if you are asking ceiling, it always looks up. If you are asking floor, it always looks down. Right? So here, if I say 3.1, apply, still shows 3. 3.9999, generally we keep the answer as 4, but apply here to see the output as 3 only. Alright, so whatever decimals you have, I really don't care. So what is the least integer I have here? 3, so it displays 3. If you use just 3, what is the output? So if you just use 3, that's the same output here. Alright, so even though you have 999999 and hit apply, it still round it off to the nearest lower integer value, which is exactly opposite of the ceiling. Right? So that is the difference between ceiling and the floor. One common question in the interview: what is the difference between the ceiling and the floor? Please explain with an example. So one question we covered. Very good. So let's look at the other functions now. So I'm going one by one. Ceiling is done, and cos theta, cot theta, degrees. This is all the trigonometry, but div is not the trigonometry functions, and let's make use of div. Okay, division, what is there in that, isn't it? So double click on div and observe here how many inputs I have to pass. You have to pass two inputs, and the two inputs are integers only, isn't it? So you have to pass two numbers, and two numbers should be integers. So I'll say 10 comma separated by comma, so I'm saying here 2, then close the bracket. So make sure there are no spaces. And is calculation valid? Yes. And what is output here? You get is 5. So 10 by 2 divisions also we are looking in the class. Very bad. So 10 by 2, the answer is 5. Very good. But if I say 10 by 3, what happens? Let's hit apply. Then you would see only output as the integers. It doesn't show the floating values. It just takes the integer values. Alright, so just remember that. So you might have one question, sir, where do we use all these functions? Isn't it? Yeah, where do you use that? We use all these functions if your data is something related to the splitting of the values, divisions, where you are getting the inputs in multiple separate columns. You want to add two columns sometimes. You have to divide one column divided by another column. If you want to see the sales to profit ratio. That means you have to take sales by profit. So you have to divide sales column by profit column. So if you want to see the ratios, then you have to divide those two different columns. Then you have to make use of these functions. And that means, can I pass here column names as well? Okay, observe. Can I pass here profit, comma, sales? So what is that you are getting? So you are getting the message. So division is called with float, comma float. Or did you mean integer by integer? So here it says I can only show the output when your input is integer, but this column is not an integer. So this column is a float. That means it has the decimals. So then it says I cannot do it. Then how do we get this output then? Then we have to convert this data type into another data type. That means convert this into another data type. So for that, we have to use type conversions. Right? So that's where everything is interlinked in the calculations. But okay, for now, so what we need to understand, so we can definitely pass the expressions, the column names into these functions with the necessary type conversions. Okay, but we'll just keep this simple one here, and if you say this, this is the output. So get hands-free with these functions, and then we'll implement this in the data source. And quickly, let's go to the next function, expression, e to the power of 5. We really don't need that. Floor is what we looked at it, and you can ignore hexagonal values, not needed. These are logarithmic functions, again, not needed. And yeah, we'll talk about this max and minimum. So very much useful for us. All right, so let's take a look here. This is a very useful function, and I used this function already. So I set max and observe the inputs here. It says you can give me the expression. That means you can write some code, the logic, or you give me two expressions, expression 1 comma expression 2. I'll tell you which one is the maximum in both. Okay, what does it mean? So I'm passing two inputs here, 20 comma 50. Can I pass two expressions? That means two values. Yeah, I can definitely pass that. And what is the output we get here is, what is the maximum value in these two? Definitely 50 maximum value, then it's giving this output. So there's no big deal in this, isn't it? And now observe here. Sir, why can't it show here as integer or floating? Why it said expressions? Yeah, that means you can even pass the conditions, even you can pass the very big logics by making use of the logical statements, and you can use these in this value, in this place. Right, so we'll talk about that when we discuss the logical functions. But for now, so what is this max and max function doing? So it is asking, give me two inputs. Now I don't want to pass two inputs. I only want to pass only one value. So is it valid or invalid? So there are many things here which gets confused in the interviews. If I say 20 comma 20, what is the maximum output? Do I get an error? Do I get 20? What is the output? So if you have same values, then it returns you the same value. All right? And if you have something like this, so hit apply, then it even finds out the least minimum difference you have. One way. And let's remove this. I don't want to pass numbers, and I want to pass two columns. Possible? Okay, instead of two columns, let's pass only one column here. Observe, I'm trying to pass here sales, or what I'm doing here. Observe, I'm dragging this column into this. So what I want to have is, I want to put this column in this function. So that way you can just type it also, isn't it? So type sales, S-A-L-E-S. Yeah, this is a hash symbol. Select that and remember a point here. So if you are dragging the measures or dimensions, so that will be shown in square brackets with an orange color. All right. And if you drag parameters, it shows in the violet color. So everyone has a coloring system. But what is the meaning here? What is the meaning here is, which we already saw this from day one, isn't it? So minimum of, maximum of. So it is going to verify in this column what is the maximum value you have. So it goes to this table and it looks at this column, sales, and it tries to find out what is the maximum value you have. Okay, the maximum value I have is 22,638. Do you get the same result? So hit apply. Remember this number, 22,638. All right, so it is giving some error message. So here, this is interesting. So observe here. So why I'm getting red colored pill? Till now I got only green and blue. The very first time I'm looking at the red colored pill. Okay, so what is the meaning of a red colored pill? I wanted to know. This is an interview question as well. Place your mouse on that. All right, so read that tooltip. So what is the tooltip there? Calculation C1 cannot be applied to a user-defined aggregate. So that means it is going to say that, so it is telling that the output is coming as aggregation, and that means the output is already aggregated and you want to apply, or you want to show the discrete value. So it is not showing that. It is not able to do that because the existing value is a number. And just to remove this here. All right, and what is that calculated field we have? C1. So put that here. And if you observe a couple of things, now I'm not getting error message, point number one. So why I did not get error message now? So what is the reason is, observe this line, very important interview question. AGG. Oh, I got a new one, AGG. I never used AGG because we only used sum, minimum, maximum, isn't it? We used these kind of things. But first time I'm seeing AGG. And let's put that here. So AGG C1. So what you have inside C1? In C1, I wrote this value, maximum of sales. This is what I wrote. Right? So what is happening here means this field C1 is already aggregated. Aggregated means we are applying the aggregation maximum. So if the field is already aggregated, and if you are trying to drag that field into this list, then Tableau says, hey, I don't apply any aggregations on that because there is already one aggregation applied. But observe here. So what I'm trying to say is, if I drag profit and put that here, so by default, what is Tableau doing? It is applying sum. This is the first aggregation, isn't it? But if I'm dragging if I'm dragging here C1, and if I'm trying to put that, so what it is doing, so why it is not applying sum? Because C1 is a field where there is already an aggregation inside it. Okay, so inside this field, there is already one aggregation applied. That means what is the conclusion? If already aggregation is applied, and if we are trying to drag that into rows and columns, then Tableau displays that with the symbol AGG, meaning I'm not going to apply any aggregations. I will just display the value. AGG means aggregation, and I don't apply any aggregations to this output because it's already got inside some aggregation, which is a maximum here. All right, and that was the reason we got error. So can we replicate that error? Observe. So how can we replicate that error? This is one interview question. So let's go to this here and let's remove the maximum function and let's say apply. So there's no aggregation here. This is just a column. If you drag a column, then Tableau applies a sum. I want in green color. Yeah, definitely you can. Where is that here? Continuous. Let's just change that to continuous and you will get definitely the value here. But I want to replicate that red colored. How did you get that red colored? Right, observe. So what we had inside C1, just the column name. If I drag that, yes, Tableau is applying sum to this column. But in my field, if I apply any aggregations now, not only sum, just applies sum here. So I'm applying the aggregation inside the calculated field, and if you hit apply here, then it turns to the red color field. Why it is turning to red now means because you already applied one aggregation, so Tableau cannot apply the aggregation again. That is the reason it says the red color fill. But what is the one line answer which we can tell in the interview? All right, so there are many reasons why we get red colored fill. Let's put that here. What does a red colored fill indicate? All right, so that indicates red colored fill indicates that there is a mismatch in applying the aggregations. That is, if the field is already, let's say if the field is aggregated with any functions like minimum, comma maximum, comma sum, comma count, anything, and if we are trying to drag that field to rows or columns, then Tableau shows as AGG for that field. All right, and one more point here. Maybe we'll put that point here. In rows or columns, if we already have any aggregated fields, and if we apply or if we change the aggregations in the calculated fields, then it shows a red colored fill indicating that Tableau cannot apply two aggregations. That is the meaning of that. So here we can remove this here, and we can also say that what is AGG in that. So we can have two questions here. Very simple first technical round questions. Right. Let's come back here, and so how to fix this? Just have to remove that, and let's say sum of sales, and if you observe now, if you drag and drop it, you get AGG. So whenever you see AGG, so just remember that there is already one aggregation applied. But we were discussing about maximum, isn't it? So what is a maximum in the sales column? This is the number. What is the least sales you got? What is the least sales you got in that column? So hit apply, and it says 0.444. Is that right or wrong? So minimum, maximum. So you have to understand very carefully. It's very simple ones, of course. Sort it out. This is 0.44. Right.
Sir, how did you overcome that red pill, sir?
Just remove that field from the rows and columns and then drag it again.
Okay.
So if this is the case, just remove that. You will find this very frequently when you do some practicing. So remove this field, and so we didn't apply anything here. So if you drag here, you will get sum. So I have fixed the problem. But here, if I apply any functions, sum of sales means, so in that column, so take all the values of the sales, and then you add it. You add all these values, and you give me the result. So what is the value for C1? Let's put that here. So this is a value for C1. So that's the functions which are maximum, which are minimum, and we should also see the sum function, but it is not available here. It will be available under the, which ones here? Aggregate functions. So we'll find the same thing again, the sum. Okay, so the number functions, what is left out? Let's take a very quick look. So we'll finish this number functions today. We saw maximum, minimum, and pi. So pi returns 22 by 7. And observe this function because this is a function which doesn't take any input. So if you select here pi, where is that pi? If you double click that, so this is a function which doesn't take any input. So there's no input. It doesn't take any input. And just hit apply, and so you are getting a message because the output is not aggregated, but you are applying aggregated. So let's remove that, and let's move that. Let's put that here. So you will see the value 3.14, the same value. So I'm not interested in pi. I'm only interested in the type of a function without any inputs. So no need to pass any inputs. So if I pass, what happens? You will get an error right away. So you get an error here. It's being called with integer. Did you mean just the empty brackets? Yeah, just the empty brackets, and then remove this option. Right. And there's one small thing on the screen, dependencies. What is it meaning? So what is that meaning is, if you click on that, so you can observe this calculated field is used in two sheets. What are the sheets? Sheet 2 and sheet 3. Oh, really? Is that used in other sheet? So if you go to sheet 2, you are using C1, isn't it? So that means if you are using the calculated fields in the row shelf or column shelves, then it's going to inform us that changing something here, it will affect the other sheet as well. And that is what the meaning of dependencies here. Right, so this calculation is dependent on sheet 2 and sheet 3. In fact, it has to say here impact instead of dependencies. So I would say this word should be impacts. So impact on sheet 2 and on sheet 3. So that's how we should understand it. Okay, let's look at the number functions. Okay, so power. So 2 to the power of 4, 4 to the power of 2. It's very simple. So we'll not go through that function. And yeah, there's a round function here. We'll just look at this because this is one very good commonly asked question. So let's double click that. So now observe here. I think this is some little different function. Let's take a look. Now let's use some example 2.1487 comma 2. You can read that and try to answer this question. So what will be the expected output? So can you put your answers in the chat window? This is a very funny function. 2.15. Yeah. So what is the problem here, sir? It is a very simple one. 2.15. Very nice. Okay. Now let me make a small modification here. And I would say here 2. Let's change to another number. So 3.1234. What is the output here? 3.1234. So what is the output of this function? 3.12. So you are not taking this apart. So hit apply. Okay, it looks good. And if I change number, then what is the output now? So I'm saying rounding off to 2 decimals. 3.15, or you are going too much, man. 3.15. Alright, so observe here, hit apply. Now you should see 3.13. So what is it? What is it here? It is nothing, very simple. So how you have to understand this is, what is the number you are using here? 2. That means after decimal point, go to 2 plus 1 position. 2 plus 1 means 3. So what is the third position here? So it is 8. Okay. So if this number is less than 5, if this number 8, if it is less than 5, so round it off to just the previous two numbers. But if the number is 5 and or greater than or equal to 5, then round it off to the next available number. Which one? This one. Right, so let's see now. So what happens here? So now if I say some random number like this, comma, let's say 3. So what would be the answer here? It's a very simple, and it's coming in the certification. I don't know what logics you have here. It's very simple. So now observe here. So 3 means 1, 2, 3. 3 plus 1, 4. So I have to look at this number. Okay, is this number less than 5 or greater than or equal to 5? So it is not less than 5, it is greater. That means you round this number to the next available number. So it should be 2.148. So if this number is 5, so let's check this here. So if it is 5, so hit apply. you should still get the same result. But if this number is 4, which is less than 5, then observe you will get the same existing number, 2.147. Alright, so we should always look at what is the number I'm asking, and so just take that decimal plus 1, and then look at the next number. Is it less than 5 or greater than 5? And then you decide the answer. Of course, this is a very simple one. And one final question. What is output? 2 or 2.1477? I'll give you 10 seconds. Alright, so round off a decimal. I said 0. So hit apply, but that means you are not taking any consideration of decimals. So it will just round it off to 2. And there is no ceiling and there is no floor applied here. Alright, so just keep in mind. So even if I say round, comma 0, so you'll get the same result. So we got this question a couple of times in the certifications. Just wanted to cover that. All right, and then the next function is the sign function. Not very frequently used or not used. Just click on that if you are passing a negative number. All right, so if you are passing the negative number, then it shows output as -1. And if you are passing any positive number, then it shows +1. +1 for positive number and -1 for any negative number. So you can have any number here. So that gives you just -1. So very simple, straightforward functions where you can just learn it by yourself. Square root, so another simple function. Square root of any given number. This is a square of a given number. So I'm not going to discuss that. And very useful function, very important function among all functions in number, which is Zn. So what is Zn here? Observe. Zn is a function which converts null values into zeros. Let's say here I have 25, then what is the output? Oh, 25. Yeah, that means if you have any value, then it shows the same value. That means, can I pass here the decimal values as well? Yes, you can pass it. But if you are getting any null values, then it will be converted into zeros. Right, so let's take a look here with a small notepad where we can understand it much better, because this is very commonly used function. So I'll say product, I'll say sales. Product A, I got 100. Product B, no sales. Product C, 200 sales. All right, so there's no value here. All right, so let's quickly save this. And let's go to let's save that here, and null data, and then let's drag this file into Tableau real quick. Just drag this and drop it into Tableau. I don't have any value for product B because no sales have been done. Now if I go to any sheet here, and if I drag the products and sales like this, or if you put that here, so it shows you that there is a null value. Oh, this is not good, showing null values. So can you replace null values with the zeros? Yeah, we can do that. So what we do here is we create another column. We create another column, which is a duplicate of sales. But if it finds any null values, it will show 0. So now observe the use of calculated fields. Now let's say here calculation and just say ZN of what I have to pass. So just pass the name of the column. Right, so I'm passing name of the column as sales. Because I don't know, in one row it can be value, one row it doesn't have the value. Now hit apply and say okay. Now observe the table. So now observe here. So it's a calculated field. We created a column, and now if you have a value, it will retain a value, same value. But if it is null, it will replace with 0. Right? So Zn is a function which replaces nulls with the zeros, and it retains the same value for non-null values. Right? So that's the usage of Zn. So Zn converts zeros or nulls into zeros. Okay, so that is about the number functions, and I'm just ignoring here the trigonometry functions and logarithmic functions, which are not at all needed. Okay, so with this, I want to stop it here for today, and we'll continue with very useful string functions tomorrow. Right? So before we wind up, any questions? Yes, that's a very good question. Can we use multiple functions in a calculated field? Yes, definitely you can make use of that. That's a good question. Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, what was the answer for yesterday's question, sir?
I don't know. I really don't know because the data sets keeps changing with the W version. I'm only interested in the procedure, what you did.
Okay. Why? Because, sir, I have got all 4 individual years,
Mhm.
and I was trying to club all those 4, and I didn't
How,
know how to do it.
how did you club them?
No, I didn't know how to club it, sir. So it
Mhm.
was the doubt.
All right. So you are asking what is the answer. All right. So the link, sorry, the clue is the sets. You have to make use of sets, then you will get the answer. But how to do it? I'll tell you something. Whether it is right or wrong, I don't know. But you have to tell me. So what you can do is combine 16, 17 sets for common customers, right? And
Okay, sir.
combine 19, 20, okay, 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay. So 16, 17 one set and
Okay, sir.
18, 19 another set. Then, so now you have two combined sets. Now again combine those two sets for common records.
Oh,
Did you
okay,
understand?
okay, sir. I got it, sir. I will try it, sir, today.
Yeah, try that. All right. I don't know the answer, but you
Okay, sir.
have
I
to
will
tell.
try once and I will let you know. Okay, sir. For sure.
So what is
Thank
the
you.
number? So just let me know. And so we are always interested in the procedure. So how you did. So I believe one problem should have a minimum of one solution or more than one solutions. So anyone find or did find any other ways of solving this problem? So just want to see, because some creative people can be there in the class. So anyone who tried that, how to solve it. I'll give you the questions where you don't find them in the internet. If you find them, you'll just Google it. I know. Okay, so try that and let me know. So it looks like nobody tried that completely. Okay, and looking at the chat window and function inside the functions. Yeah, that's what we said. So you can definitely use a function inside another function. And let's say this is one function, and if I say comma, so today is another function. So this is one function, this is another function. So I'm making use of I'm making use of different functions here, isn't it? So we can definitely do that. So that is possible. Sorry. So I should not get any errors. So interval, just say 1. That's fine. Calculation is valid. So this is one function, and inside that I used another function. So like that, how many use? N number of functions. So what we call them as nested functions. So one inside the another, always we call them as nested loops, nested functions, nested data, nested dimensions, one inside the another. Okay? So yes, we can definitely do that. And you'll get a very good exercises as well. So let's see how we can solve it. So you have to solve your age, and you have to tell me how many months, how many years, how many days you came on this earth. So till now, I'll tell you something. Only 4 people solved that problem, and till this number of batches, only 4 people were able to solve that. So I'll give you the question to you, and we'll talk about that when time comes. We'll do that. It's too early. So we'll talk about that when the date functions comes into picture. Okay, so that's all for today. We'll meet again tomorrow, same time. Tomorrow is Saturday. Okay, hold on. So those who have submitted the sheets, can we meet tomorrow after the class, after a half-an-hour break? So that means if the class runs from 8:30 to 9:30, so we'll take half-an-hour break, 30 minutes. Then can we meet at 10 a.m.? So those who have submitted sheets, I see only 2 or 3. So can we meet at 10 a.m. tomorrow? I think it is 8. I think it is Sweta. And anyone else?
Sir, this sheet that joins one, or is there any other assignment, sir?
No, only the assignment. First assignment.
First and second assignment, right?
Only first. Only first.
Oh, okay. First we are done with that. I thought of there's another assignment.
Yeah. So
Okay,
are
sir.
2 people available here? So Teja, are you still there or you left? Okay, I think you left. And okay, the other user also left. Nice. Okay. Okay, so they were not available. So maybe we'll see tomorrow. All right, then it's all for today. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye bye.